been convened to provide information and insights into Trinidad and Tobago's presidency or candidacy for the presidency of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly for the period 2023 to 2024. Thank you very much for your interest in this issue and for viewing today. And for this briefing, I invite Senator the Honourable Dr. Amery Browne to address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the media and by extension, members of the national public of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you for your presence, PS and other members of the team here. Today, I'm going to give a brief summary of some very important diplomatic events and activities of Trinidad and Tobago in the recent past and a schedule of activities for the future. As many of you would be aware, toward the end of March 2023, I proceeded on an official visit to New York for a number of engagements at the United Nations. I would just give a brief summary of the work that I undertook during that particular mission. So on Wednesday, 29th March 2023, I was at the United Nations and did a statement at the UN General Assembly. This was during the morning period when the General Assembly of the United Nations was considering a draft resolution seeking an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on a matter of climate responsibility. This is an issue that was brought to the fore by the nation of Vanuatu, and a number of states co-sponsored that resolution, including Trinidad and Tobago. So when I spoke on behalf of our nation as co-sponsors of this resolution. That very afternoon, Wednesday, 29th March 2023, I also held a meeting with the General Secretary of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres. We discussed a number of issues pertinent to Trinidad and Tobago, relevant to CARICOM. There was some discussion on Haiti. There was discussion on our upcoming regional symposium on crime, and of course on the 50th anniversary of the Caribbean Community, which is celebrated in July of this year. So also at that meeting with the Secretary General, there was some discussion of Trinidad and Tobago's candidature for the presidency of the General Assembly. That evening, that very evening of Wednesday, 29th March, I was a key speaker at our official launch of the candidature of Ambassador Dennis Francis for the position of President of the UN General Assembly for the 78th session from 2023 to 2024. That was a very important event. We invited and received attendance by over 175 diplomats from all over the world. We used the event as a showcase of our excellent candidate, highly experienced, distinguished diplomat who is well known across the world, who has worked in a number of missions on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago, who is known as a man of integrity, of fairness, an excellent communicator, someone who resonates in all of the corridors in which he would feature, and really is positioned to be an excellent president of the General Assembly for the 78th session. So we had the launch event. We also used the event to showcase Trinidad and Tobago and the beautiful diversity of our country. As some of you would have seen, we offered doubles to the diplomats. We had tassa drumming. We had steel pan. It was a beautiful event. We also had singing by one of our proud members of the diaspora which is Miss Carol Addison, who's very famous and a wonderful singer. So that was that particular event. The next day was Thursday, 30th March. I went straight back to the General Assembly Hall of the United Nations and delivered a statement at a meeting presided over a thematic area led by Turkey, actually. The First Lady of Turkey was present. And this was a discussion at a high-level meeting on zero waste. And I delivered a statement on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago at that particular forum. Also on Thursday, 30th of March, for the first time, as Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, I addressed the Security Council of the United Nations. The issue of discussion was a debate on peace and security in Africa and the impact of developmental policies on a program for silencing the guns in Africa. In my address, I also brought in the priority that these issues have with CARICOM and with Trinidad and Tobago, because there's certainly, we are connected by a common concern about the spread of violent crime and the impact of policies on how we can reduce this epidemic of violence in our developing societies. I then had a working meeting with members of our team at the permanent mission, looking ahead as we conclude the campaign for the presidency of the General Assembly and looking at additional candidatures that Trinidad and Tobago will be advancing in the future. Then had a meeting with the staff of our consulate, and at 5 a.m. the next morning, I was on the way to the airport to return to Trinidad and Tobago. So what I've described is a very intense, very efficient, but important series of engagements aimed at further elevating the profile of Trinidad and Tobago at the United Nations, providing support to the candidature of Ambassador Dennis Francis, and officially launching the campaign, which is now underway. So let's talk a little bit more about Trinidad and Tobago's candidature. This is the first time that this nation will hold such a prestigious level within the United Nations. We see this as an opportunity for us, the nation, all of Trinidad and Tobago. There are only 2 occasions in the past when CARICOM member states would have held the presidency of the General Assembly. Once was in 2023 for the 50th session of the General Assembly, when St. Lucia, represented by Julian Robert Hunt, held the presidency for 1 session. And then in 2013, Antigua and Barbuda, under the candidacy of John Ash, presided over the 68th session. This was in 2013. Now we are in 2023, and Trinidad and Tobago, for the very first time for us, is poised to hold this very important position. The President of the General Assembly of the UN is ranked the highest in the order of hierarchy within the UN system. So this is not a light undertaking. This is a major undertaking, and it should be a point of pride for every citizen of our nation. It really should not be a forum for partisan bickering and squabbling and one-upmanship and tribal competition, as was evidenced by a very unfortunate media release by a particular UNC individual. Very unfortunate decision to take what is a national issue, a priority of the foreign policy of the sovereign state of Trinidad and Tobago, and to try to convert the discourse into CAMLA and UNC and PP and PNM. Those terms have not been associated with the conduct of this campaign by this ministry, nor by our permanent mission at the United Nations. every action we take, every decision we make, every overture that we advance is on behalf of all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So let's talk a bit more about the sequence with respect to the presidency of the General Assembly. As I said, it's a very important seat, and it offers us the opportunity to show Trinidad and Tobago in an even more positive light, in a leadership role. We view this as important because it can assist us in our future candidatures. It opens the door to prospects to serve as in a non-permanent capacity on the Security Council in the future, and we are already taking steps in that direction. It offers the potential for our candidates in a range of international fora to achieve additional attention and support and endorsement and success. Very important for our country. So I want to spend a little bit of time on the timeline. How did we arrive at this point? And that timeline, in a fair elaboration of it, takes us back to 2013. Now in 2013, our permanent mission at the United Nations dispatched a note verbal to the UN informing the chair of GRULAC. This was on the 3rd of September 2013, informing the chair of GRULAC, which is the regional grouping of Latin American and Caribbean states, that Trinidad and Tobago has identified that we wish to present a candidature. We identified our intention to present a candidature for the 78th session. I have checked the records at this ministry and at the United Nations. There was no request for endorsement by GRULAC in 2013. There was no request for endorsement by GRULAC. And I was very disturbed, and I will just offer one quote from the media release by Rodney Charles, where he claimed that, again, in the attempt to make this very partisan, on September 3rd, 2013, on the instructions of Kamla Persad Bissessar, Trinidad and Tobago obtained the full endorsement of GRULAC for its candidacy. The full endorsement of GRULAC was not requested in 2013, and I can say categorically, without fear of contradiction, the endorsement, full is a redundant term, the endorsement or full endorsement of GRULAC was never received until the year 2023. I will give you the timelines very specifically. So that entire media release and that entire attempt to take this down a partisan road of one-upmanship was founded on a complete and total falsehood. Was that a surprise coming from Mr. Charles? I will leave that for you to conclude. Further, in the correspondence generated at that time, unfortunately, there was reference to the intention to contest an election in 2024, when in reality, the election for this candidature occurs in 2023. So I will leave that where it stands for the moment. And then on September 12th, 2013, in a memo to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at that time, our permanent mission to the United Nations informed the ministry that it had taken the initiative to submit the candidacy of Trinidad and Tobago for the 78th session. And I'm quoting now, Trinidad and Tobago's candidature has been endorsed by the CARICOM caucus, very different to GRULAC, and has been submitted to GRULAC for eventual endorsement. This was on the 12th of September 2013. 2013, and Charles is claiming that on the 3rd of September 2013, Trinidad and Tobago had obtained the full endorsement of GRULAC. So it really is a series of untruths and misrepresentations. The fact of the matter is the endorsement of GRULAC was obtained in 2023, and that is critical to this sequence of events. What is the role of endorsement? Because this is GRULAC's turn for the presidency, it is very important to achieve the endorsement of this regional body. This can never be assumed. It cannot be taken as a fait accompli. It cannot be taken as a light or trite matter. Endorsement, a request for endorsement must be specified in writing, and the endorsement must be received in writing. All of that has now been achieved. In addition, and this is very important, in accordance with the established practice of the GRULAC group, endorsement of candidatures by GRULAC cannot be obtained more than 6 months prior to the election date. There's someone in this country who has tried to misrepresent that that endorsement was obtained 10 years prior to the endorsement date, when GRULAC's practice of procedure only grants endorsement within 6 months of the election date. So you can choose the reality in which you wish to live. For candidatures in which a named candidate is required, such endorsement again will only be achieved within 6 months of the election date. And for this presidency of the General Assembly, you don't just identify a country's interest and a country's candidature. You have to identify an individual. We have done so in the form of Ambassador Dennis Francis, who was granted his instruments of appointment as our permanent representative at the United Nations in New York in the year 2021. I hope you're following this timeline very closely. On July 2021, a briefing document was received by the ministry from our permanent mission, giving all of the activities required, including the financial commitment required for our government and for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to achieve a successful candidature. Cabinet subsequently approved our candidacy for the presidency and subsequently approved Ambassador Dennis Francis as our specific candidate. This was on the 28th of October, 2021. Since that point, our permanent mission and our team, which is not a PNM team or a PP team or a UNC team, this is Trinidad and Tobago's dedicated and hardworking officers, led by our ambassador, have undertaken a series of tactical approaches and strategic advances aimed at securing the support of all the states necessary for our success in this endeavor. This included a series of formal and informal meetings and engagements, as well as the use of our fora at other missions across the world, including meetings we've held here at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. On September 28th, 2022, our permanent mission in New York at the United Nations informed the chair of GRULAC of the decision of Trinidad and Tobago to present Dennis Francis as our candidate. On February 2nd, 2023, our campaign strategy was approved by the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. Within that strategy, we highlighted that the candidacy for the President of the General Assembly cannot be assumed since any member state can present a candidate for the election up to 48 hours before the election date. There is no fait accompli here, and work must be done. Any member state of GRULAC can decide to present a candidate up to 48 hours prior to the election. Those are the realities. So I just want to make it very clear that on February 28th, 2023, and we will circulate that document, at its monthly meeting, GRULAC granted endorsement to Trinidad and Tobago for its candidature. This did not occur in 2013. It didn't occur any time between 2013 and 2023. It occurred on the 28th of February 2023, and that is an incontrovertible fact. There is no record on file indicating that Trinidad and Tobago received any endorsement from GRULAC prior to that period. What I also would like to indicate is that this candidature should make every citizen of our country proud. We have every intention to succeed. There are a number of additional events and fora that will be hosted in support of its conclusion. We will be having an event right here in Trinidad and Tobago featuring Ambassador Dennis Francis, where the diplomats based in Port of Spain, the heads of mission assigned to Trinidad and Tobago, will be invited and be exposed to the high caliber of our national candidate. We will have additional events at the United Nations in New York as well, including a closing off reception on the eve of the election, where we will be in a position to thank member states for their support and make a final push to ensure that our mission is accomplished in this regard. So I wanted to present these facts, first of all, to indicate that this is a nationwide initiative and something that all our people should be very proud of. And secondly, to rebut the attempt by one UNC-associated individual to make this a partisan squabble and a case of one-upmanship. I've presented a very clear timeline of the events which initiated in 2013, but there were essential steps that have occurred since then, and they weren't steps taken by Amery Browne or a minister. It is our team of dedicated, patriotic, hard-working officers who, on this very day, are working in pursuit of a success in that candidature and other areas of potential success for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So with those few words, I now open the floor for questions on this particular issue. There are no other candidates at this time. We have achieved the endorsement of GRULAC, which gives us some confidence and assurance. This does not mean that we put our hands in our pockets and wait on the election day. We are not the first member state of the United Nations to conduct a campaign of this nature. The elements are well established. We are following the precedent. We are doing our due diligence. We are working very hard, both at our overseas missions and right here at headquarters at the ministry and in Trinidad and Tobago, to ensure that we bring home and culminate this success, and also to ensure that our conduct of the presidency is of the highest distinction and in a manner that will showcase the brand of Trinidad and Tobago, the strength of our diplomacy, and our strong history at the UN and other international fora in the best possible light. We believe that this is our time as a small island developing state, and our voice at such a level is not just critical, but will also be beneficial to the affairs of the General Assembly and the globe at this time. We are also assured that we have identified, approved, and offered the UN and the world the best possible candidate for such a position.
I noticed you said that the candidate was chosen by, well, under this administration. Was there, you said there was no candidate identified before?
No, it would have been impossible. So what was done was Trinidad and Tobago indicated its intention to field a candidate. We requested support for this effort from other member states, including at the CARICOM caucus and including at GRULAC. But we did not have a candidate. It would not have been possible at that time. I'm not blaming anyone. We did not have a candidate. We identified and gave instruments of appointment to Ambassador Dennis Francis in 2021. He's been working hard at the UN since then and has established an admirable profile there. We formally approved and identified him subsequently as Trinidad and Tobago's candidate for this position. And having done so, we were able to request the endorsement, which is very important in this circumstance, the endorsement of GRULAC for Ambassador Dennis Francis on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago to hold the presidency. And in writing, we have received the endorsement. That's the truthful record.
It was an idea Dennis Francis's history and before his appointment.
Yes. Dennis Francis, it would be no exaggeration, is one of the most experienced foreign officers that Trinidad and Tobago has ever developed. He cut his teeth right here at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, worked his way up through the ranks, led a number of divisions at the ministry, including the Multilateral Affairs Division. He served in a number of overseas postings, including in Jamaica, including in Geneva, including in New York. He has been head of mission for Trinidad and Tobago in Geneva and now at the United Nations in New York. He's extremely well known on both sides of the Atlantic in diplomatic circles. He is, as I said earlier, a man of great fairness, an excellent communicator who resonates with his audience, and who has an excellent overview and experience in multilateral matters. Again, I do not believe we could have found a better candidate. And at the campaign launch event that I attended, I must tell you, I was very much moved by the expressions of admiration and the embrace that our candidate has received by diplomats from across the globe. There were over 175 of them at that event. I greeted them all, and they are very enthusiastic about this individual and about Trinidad and Tobago's candidature.
How long will he serve them?
It's about 1 year. The election occurs on June the 1st, 2023. And for that entire 78th session, a proud son of our soil, or should I say a son of our soil, in whom we should all be proud, will be sitting in that chair, presiding over the General Assembly, in a position to make key decisions on areas of focus, high-level meetings, specific themes that the General Assembly may elect to focus on. It's very important in terms of the future of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, Minister,
Good day.
I just want to go into the symposium which you would have announced a few days ago regarding happening in Trinidad. Can you give us an insight as to what is happening with this CARICOM symposium? Because I know it's supposed to happen this month.
You said this week?
Month.
Yes, indeed. You are correct. The symposium is coming up. The planning is well underway. There's an interministerial team led by Minister Camille Robinson-Regis. This team met just a few minutes ago once again. I was part of that meeting, and I'm in a position just to summarize that the planning is going very well. The feedback from across the region has been extremely positive. We are anticipating a significant turnout of heads of government, as well as other high representatives of CARICOM member states, associate members of CARICOM, other countries within the region and territories within the region, Mexico, the United States of America, and others will all come together for this regional symposium. It will occur at the Hyatt Hotel. This is where the event will be hosted over a span of 2 days, when the root causes of violent crime, the antecedents, a number of research projects that have occurred around this theme of a public health approach to addressing violence and crime will be presented. The CARICOM Secretariat is very much a key part of our planning process, given that this is a regional event. And we will also have commissioners of police from some of our neighboring countries coming in to share their perspectives. One of the messages is that this epidemic of violence is not a Trinidad and Tobago issue alone. We are united with the rest of CARICOM, who are very much feeling besieged, as well as other areas of developing areas around the world. So this is something that we are approaching in solidarity with fellow member states. They have important perspectives to share with us, lessons learned, etc. And we also have important perspectives to share with the rest of the region.
Just two questions in one. Is there a proposed date as yet? And I know that you would have, Trinidad and Tobago, through your ministry, would have joined the legal action in Mexico regarding U.S. gun manufacturers, knowing that one of the cases were thrown out on possibility of these challenges legally. Before this decision was taken, what statistics did the government have to make that decision? Because what we see from the TTPS, we've seen a lot of guns like Glocks, which are Australia-made. We have AK-47s, which are more Russian-made weapons. What statistics would have compelled government to make such a decision to join this legal action, knowing well that what we see being seized by the TTPS every day is sometimes guns not manufactured in the U.S., but in a minority manufactured in the U.S., with a majority in other countries outside of the U.S.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the question. So I just want to take you back to the rationale. And it's not based on any particular statistic. You haven't shared any, but you've shared an observation that there are handguns and light arms in our country, as applies to elsewhere, that may have been manufactured in various parts of the world. That does not deter us from taking the action that we have taken. What we have done is joined with Mexico, with the Bahamas, with Jamaica, with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and other select other CARICOM member states who have joined in what is currently an appeal before the United States courts, focused on not the US government, but on private sector manufacturers of weapons. You would be hard-pressed to make a case that those weapons sourced from those factories in the United States are not part of the violent crime scenario in the Caribbean Sea, in Central America, and elsewhere. You'd be hard-pressed to make that case. So the fact that there may be Glocks and weapons manufactured elsewhere does not deter us from joining in solidarity with an action we feel can have very important potential repercussions elsewhere as well. So that really is the philosophy. This was presented to Prime Minister Rowley in full effect at the recent Heads of Government meeting in the Bahamas. And right there in discussion, both at caucus and in the plenary, there was a strong view from our region's heads that this is the type of initiative that we might wish to be associated with. Some of it is symbolic. And again, just a reminder that the focus is on the private sector manufacturers as opposed to the Biden administration or the US government as a whole. So I hope I've addressed your question in that it's not based on the statistics in terms of where the Glock may have come from, but based on a pressing regional concern and the fact that Mexico has taken a step, we feel, in the right direction to seek to hold manufacturers of these weapons accountable for the damage done at their final destination.
This is another question, so just staying into what is happening with the TNT nationals in Syria. Just an update. I know the Nightingale Committee was created a while back. Could you give us an idea as to what is happening with that committee at this time? Because I know we are now seeing there's a three-man team led by former House Speaker Mr. Mohammed. What is happening with the Nightingale Committee? Could you share it on that?
Yes, thank you. And I would, give a brief update in terms of the status of those two groups that you have mentioned. The most recent committee identified by Prime Minister Rowley is a very small 3-member team that is assisting the government in the next phase of this process, which involves particular interactions, direct interactions with members of the Muslim community in Trinidad and Tobago. You'd be aware that the lead, Mr. Nizam Mohammed, the other 2 members, have been engaged in those areas of dialogue, making those connections, also seeking to harvest specific information that can assist us in the phased repatriation of some of these individuals. That's different to the role of the Nightingale team, which is a multidisciplinary team with some strong composition from the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, which has been looking at the overall framework. There's work still going on the legislative framework, all of which will come together to ensure that in the end, the genuine humanitarian concerns at play here are properly and responsibly addressed, but also the national security, the very real national security issues are also properly addressed. So that team is still hard at work and has not been substituted by Mr. Mohammed's 3-man team. the work of those two groups are designed to culminate in the end with the successful address of the humanitarian as well as the national security concerns. So the work on the legislative front is going on. I can tell you, and a lot of diplomacy is done outside of the glare of public minutiae, but I can tell you that a lot of diplomatic work is occurring, all aimed at ensuring that the nation of Trinidad and Tobago goes about this process effectively and responsibly. And in addressing one issue, we do not trigger a calamity or greater problems in another issue. So we are hard at work in such regard.
And my last question to you, Mr. The reports of Sherlock's West MP saying that he's going to make the trip to Syria from your government perspective and your ministry, and there's some level of support you may have to him when he's going into uncharted territory, as you say.
Well, I see you smiling as you ask the question. I have to say, it brings back the memory of one individual, a national, who had indicated he was heading off to the Ukraine. And we had the bizarre scenario where we were working very hard to try to get one of our nationals out of Ukraine. And we had someone from this country representing that they were going to the battlefield in Ukraine. I'm not sure that journey was ever undertaken. But what we did was to give some advice and caution. The same would apply to any national of Trinidad and Tobago. As a fellow citizen myself, I would be very concerned about any individual attempts to go off into a challenging part of the world in a manner that may not be properly planned or well supported. In the endeavors that we are undertaking, there is coordination with the government of Turkey, the government of Syria, the International Committee of the Red Cross, elements at the United Nations and other fora to ensure that every step that we take is the best possible step, and of course with due consideration for the safety of our officials and officers as well. If any national wishes to go to any destination around the world, there would be some level of individual choice in the matter. I would hope the intentions are the most noble, but at the same time, there is a danger when affairs of state are being treated with that they could fall prey to just mere grandstanding without any substance behind it. And in a matter like this, where other eyes are on every action, and where the national security of our country must always be properly guarded, I'm not sure there's room for too much of that kind of individual adventurism. But we'll see how it goes.
Good afternoon, Nurse Fraser from the Newsday.
Hi.
Recently, the Prime Minister and the AG would have said they are planning to ask the Commonwealth Secretariat to assist with hiring attorneys from the Commonwealth to fill vacancies at the DPP's office. I don't think if you are assisting with this process in any way going forward.
Well, what I can say is that the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs serves as an important liaison and linkage between our government and external bodies, parties, nations, fora. So whether with respect to CARICOM, with respect to United Nations, with respect to the Commonwealth, we are an important conduit in both directions. And of course, we are supportive of the Prime Minister's initiative in this regard.
Another question from me. The father of TT National was murdered in the US some years ago that reached out to us. And he was saying that his wife was not granted a visa to attend trial because their reasons weren't valid enough. They said they were going to be reaching out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I mean, I know whether or not they want to decide who gets a visa or not. Is there anything the ministry can do to help anyone in that situation?
Well, it's unfortunate that a number of circumstances do arise with other sovereign states where our nationals may or may not succeed with consular matters, including the success with visa applications. And we've seen some circumstances where it may be for health reasons, it might be for education objectives, it might be to attend a funeral at times, it might be to attend legal proceedings or to support legal proceedings where the decisions, consular decisions of these other member states may not always make our nationals happy or may not facilitate the movement they may intend to make. We have to always bear in mind and respect that we're dealing with sovereign nations that have a right to make their consular decisions. And we also expect and demand the same respect for the sovereign decisions of Trinidad and Tobago. What I would say is that if the case you're referring to involves decisions of the United States of America, and there are opportunities where citizens would make representation to the U.S. Embassy to clarify or to approach again, to reapply. I must tell you, in some cases, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs has gone so far as to point out that a citizen is seeking a reconsideration, but we are not in a position to dictate and demand that any other sovereign state makes a consular decision that we might wish to see. So it really is up to that government and the appropriate authorities to make their own decisions with respect to granting or not granting a visa. What we do is to try to create the best possible environment so that consular decisions of other states can be as favorable as possible to nationals of Trinidad and Tobago. And in so doing, it behooves us to ensure that we conduct our affairs in the best possible light, and that we succeed in the efforts that we are seeking to make at the international fora, because all of this helps elevate the prestige of Trinidad and Tobago, and yes, you can say, can redound even to the benefit of sometimes individual decisions that might have to be made. Are there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? If not, I would just turn back over to our Permanent Secretary, Ms. Rita Toussaint.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you very much for the clarity with which you have shared the information and insights on the issue of the Trinidad and Tobago candidacy.
Join in the fun this Saturday, April 8th for our grand Easter egg hunt and free giveaways. Enjoy free popcorn, free cotton candy, free bounce castle rides, and prizes to be won at divastoys.com/flagship MacBean from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Get huge discounts on all your favorite brands: Graco, Dr. Brown's, Carter's, Gerber, Barbie, Hot Wheels, Lego, LOL Surprise, Holly